This is Steve from Boxing UK. Absolute joy to catch up after a while with Dave Coldwell. How are you, Dave?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. I'm not too bad at all. How's yourself?
Getting there.
Good, man. Good.
Just talking off camera there, you're missing the crowds.
Massively, mate. It's just not the same. The atmosphere, the banter. It's just a different sport without crowds. The sport is just different without fans. Whether it's football, you're watching football, there's no atmosphere or whatever. Boxing, whether you're watching it on TV or when you're there and you working on it, it's completely different. Listen, we're fortunate that the wheels are still moving, but can't wait to get the crowds back. Really, I'm looking forward to it.
Light at the end of the tunnel if last week's anything to go by, mate.
Yeah.
Just a question that's come to me head on that, Dave. As a trainer in the corner, does no crowds help you? Because one of the things that people notice is you can hear the punches clearer, or is it just no different at all?
No, you can when you're in the corner anyway. I tend to see what's happening and hear what's happening anyway. So yeah, that doesn't really make any difference as such. It's just hearing.
Can I ask about two of your lads just to start with? Jordan Gill the other week had a good win. That was a tough fight for him, wasn't it?
It was always going to be a tough fight. Juarez is a very good fighter, and we knew it was the highest level that Jordan's ever fought at. He's been in with people like Donaire, Angelo Leo, Carlos Castro, to name but a few. He's a very, very good fighter. 19 knockouts out of 25, absolutely relentless. And even in the fights he loses, he gives the guys that have won hell, and they know that they've been in a fight. But very, very pleased with Jordan's performance. Thought he boxed brilliant. He was, boxed to orders, boxed to how we've been working in the gym consistently. And then went in and did that on fight night. And Paco, who manages Juarez, also manages Tinoco and a lot of other good Mexican fighters, and he couldn't believe the difference between Jordan when he fought Tinoco to now. He says he's improved immeasurably. He says he was so impressed with him. And Juarez himself said that skill for skill, Jordan's the most skillful fighter he's ever been in the ring with. So it was great. It was a real good educational fight for Jordan, and it was what I wanted for him in that fight and at this stage for him. It's
for those that don't know, he's had a couple of wins now after what was a pretty horrid time for him, wasn't it?
Yeah. Beaten by Tinoco, and then had the thyroid illness where we didn't think he was going to box again. Come through all that, stayed dedicated, stayed focused, listened to everything I've asked him to do, trusted in when I'm saying to him, listen, I will get you a fight, and there's no whispers about him fight, there's no rumors about him, there's no plan for him to fight. And I just kept saying, stay in the gym, let's work to improve, and it will come, and managed to get him a fight for February. And it wasn't just a fight, it was a good fight, a big fight for him. And this is what happens if you put in the work and if you stay dedicated. You get an opportunity and you're in the best possible shape to be able to take the opportunity. It's no good getting an opportunity. You have to be able to take it. And when we say about fighters staying ready, it's not just about staying ready to be able to fight, but can you fight at a championship limit? Can you be around that weight so you can make the championship limit and you can box 10 or 12 rounds? That's staying ready. And that's what Jordan Gill was. Stayed up here with us for New Year's Eve instead of being down at his family. Was on his own, staying at his flat, so we could train New Year's Day, and that all paid off on fight night.
It did. We spoke to Jordan fight week, and he called out a couple of names. He said he was going to call out Isaac Lowe if he wanted to fight someone with a pulse, and he also said he would take on Lara if Warrington didn't want the rematch. Have you had any discussions on that since the victory, Dave?
Well, Warrington's got the rematch, haven't they? So that's that gone. Isaac Lowe, he said something about fighting about Jordan in the past, and so Jordan was like, "Yeah, I'll fight him. That's a good fight." I think he put on his Instagram story or something. So Jordan was like, "Yeah, I'll fight him," and Jordan wants that fight. You know, he'd love that fight. I've heard Eddie mention it on IFL TV that he would like to make that fight for Fury and AJ's undercard. So if that's possible, then yes, please, we'll take that. But if Isaac Lowe wants to go a different avenue, then, which I've heard him. I think he tweeted something about Jordan after Jordan's win, or before. You know, if he gets through that fight, that he'd like to, he'd smash Jordan or something. Then since that, I've seen him in an interview where he's saying, "Oh, well, it makes no sense for me if unless it's world title eliminator, blah blah." I don't know if he wants that fight or not, but if the fight can be made, Jordan, we're 100% up for that fight. That's 100% nailed on that we want that fight. If they want to go a different way, we'll go our way, and that's how boxing is, really. It's the same with any pair of fighters. They either fight or they go their separate ways.
Can I ask just your quick thoughts on Lee Wood? Because the last time we spoke was after he lost to Jazza Dickens, and I remember distinctly you being really down, particularly about that one, Dave. So just a little word on him getting the British title a few weeks ago.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And the other thing is, Lee Wood's always wanted to win the British title. I saw him doing an interview well before the fight, saying that his targets were to win the British title, to fight at the Nottingham Forest ground, and to fight for a world title and win a world title. But the British title is something that he's always wanted, and it was great to deliver that for him, and it was great to see him go out there and perform so well, and become British champion. So he's a happy fighter right now. He's back in training now, so we're just going to see what comes next, and what we can do.
Good man. Been a couple of shocks, Dave, recently. Josh Warrington and Josh Kelly. Just your thoughts on those. Do you think the lack of a crowd hindered both, particularly Warrington?
Yeah, with the people don't understand how difficult that is, and how it is weird. It's eerie. It's hard to explain. You're coming out in the arena. You got your music blasting out. You want to kind of, have a bit of vibe going, but usually it's the energy of the crowd that gives them that bit of showmanship and gives them that little bit of energy to enjoy the ring walk. But instead what they do is they're kind of like walking out a little bit, feeling a little bit, oh, this is strange, because you're walking to this little ring and all the arena looks fantastic, but there's just nobody around. There's no noise, there's no crowd noise, so it's weird. And then the introduction and everything, it's dead silent. It's weird. It's very hard to describe. Now, obviously that's the same for both fighters. So you can't just turn around and say, because they got beat because of that. No, ultimately they got beat because they made the wrong choices, or the other opponent was too good for them on the night. That's essentially what happened. I thought Warrington showed immense bravery. I thought it was unbelievable bravery. And it was quite uncomfortable watching it at ringside. It wasn't nice to see. But he chose to stand and fight with the Mexican. The only thing that the Mexican had was that he was tough and he could punch. So if you take away your boxing ability and you stand in front of him and try and out-tough him and out-punch him, it's a 50-50 shootout. He got shot. And, that's a mistake. I feel, in my opinion, that's a mistake that he made. Whether that's looking beyond, whether that's a bit of the crowd, whether that's feeling that you're far too superior for what's in front of you and taking the man lightly. I think that's the bigger case. You know, when your mindset thinks I can just go in there and just do what I want with this guy, and then when all of a sudden it's a bit different, it's like, oh, hang on a minute, it's harder to get your mind switched on properly. But I remember I was sitting at ringside and I said, after the first round, I thought, okay, he's going to go back to corner and get a bollocking now, and he'll come out in a box. Then after the second round, it was still the same, and he was getting clipped a couple of times. I was like, okay, now, whatever we get now, it's been a good, you know, at least Lara's been in the fight, because I was still expecting, right now, Warrington's going to just go out and box and just outbox him and take him to bits now, and then, you know, and win the fight, because he had a few alarm bells when he was getting tagged. And I remember saying, well, at least we've had a couple of rounds of a tear up, so it's, you know, it's made it worth this fight. Well, I didn't know he was just going to carry on to keep doing the same thing, sort of thing. So that was a big shock. But it was a great lesson as well. It was a great lesson because I know from experience, like I said, you can blame, you can say, oh, the crowd, it affected him and everything. But ultimately, once the bell went, he made the wrong decisions, in my opinion. I can say the same thing for Jordan. When Jordan lost to Tinoco, he wasn't right, it wasn't well. But once the bell went, he made the wrong decisions. He tried to stand and fight with fire with a tough, strong Mexican. Don't do that, because you can come unstuck. It makes it more difficult fight. But Jordan learned from the lessons going forward and become a better fighter for it. And sometimes a loss can make you a better fighter. And this is how I see Josh Kelly against Avanesian. He can learn from that fight, come back a better fighter, rather than people just saying he's overhyped, he's not good enough, he's never going to make it, he's this, he's that, blah, blah, and writing him off, which is what a lot of people like to do when a boxer loses, especially when it's a slickster, a flash fighter, you know, somebody with a bit of hype about him, a bit of showmanship. People like to see him fall and like to then just write him off when they get beat. But if they take it in the right way, in the right manner, they can come back a better fighter. And that's what I expect from Josh Kelly now. You know, Avanesian is very strong, very, very tough, punches hard, very experienced. And one thing you can't buy, you can't borrow, you can't pretend to have is experience. You can only get that experience by going through things that adds to your experience. And Josh Kelly had not been in that situation before. Again, I felt, and again, I might be wrong, but me watching it, I kind of felt that Josh Kelly came out, because there was all this thing about the size of him and making the weight, and then how big is he going to be when he gets in the ring. He was massive when he got in the ring. I got told when I sat down to watch the fight, I got told what he was apparently. I can't remember if it was the night of the weigh-in, what he'd put on, or it was the morning after the weigh-in. But it was a lot of weight. And just look at him, how he was in the ring. He was carrying himself as though he was a bigger man, as though he was, trying to kind of like stamp his authority on the fight as the bigger, stronger man, not just a skillful man, but it was kind of like it seemed to me like he was loading up a little bit and wanting to use that size and make Avanesian feel that size and strength, trying to prove that he was as strong or stronger than David, which I feel was a mistake. And that's again, until you get in that position, and if you kind of like believe that you can beat a man at his own game, you can come unstuck. And sometimes you have to understand, although it might make great for TV, but fighting to another man's strength gives them a chance of using their strength. Whereas if you take away their strength, I expected Kelly to go in there and just, in fact, I said before the fight, because I know that Adam, he doesn't really care what anybody thinks, and he's quite willing to make a fight a bit of a stinker if he has to, let's get the win. I kind of thought for the first 6 rounds or so, Kelly would be single shots and shooting off, pot shotting, singles, ones, twos, and shooting off, constantly using his feet and his legs and keeping Avanesian missing. But I felt on fight night as though he was kind of like meeting fire with fire. And that played into Avanesian's hands, and Avanesian just ate that up. And he was brilliant on the night. And it's a harsh lesson for Josh, but it's not a lesson that other fighters haven't been given before, and they've come back from it. So why can't Josh?
Exactly. And you're dead right. It almost seems like a fighter loses his unbeaten record on social media when he's finished, which bizarre. Yeah. If that was the case, Dave, you'd probably have about 4 boxers doing the rounds at the minute.
Exactly. It's just how it is.
Sorry, did you see Tony Jeffries? He was quite outspoken, saying that they chucked Josh Kelly in too early. He particularly pointed the finger at Eddie Hearn as well, saying that they'd thrown the kid in far too early.
Eddie Hearn doesn't really make the decisions for Josh Kelly. I think what you'll find is in my experience working with Adam Booth, Adam calls the shots when it comes down to his fighters. They were confident that their man was going to win, and he didn't. This is boxing. When our prospects who are showing immense talent are totally outclassing guys coming through, we're in a clamour to say he needs to have a test. He needs to have a test. He needs to have a test. And then when they take a test, and it's too soon, experience beats them, or they're just not good enough at that time, we like to say, "Oh, shouldn't have rushed him. Shouldn't have put him in that fight." It's hindsight's amazing, and we all use it, and we all use it to make ourselves sound great and clever after an event. But if Josh Kelly had gone out there and beaten Avanesian, what does that say? It becomes European champion, and it's a great win. But he didn't. He got beat. There's no shame in that. He got beat. This is boxing. The problem with boxing is that we want people to take the test, but when they take the test and if they get beat, we don't think, okay, just it's part of the experience, part of the process. It doesn't mean that your career is done there and then. It doesn't have to mean that. If you learn from it, you can come back as a better fighter. It's part of the education. It's part of the experience. It's part of life. In life, you have ups and downs. In boxing, it's the same. It just so happens that we're under the microscope, and so people like to start pointing fingers and blaming. But I didn't hear anybody saying before the fight, that he shouldn't be taking that fight. He shouldn't be taking the fight. We said it. So it could be a really tough fight, and a lot of people thought Avanesian was going to win. A lot of people thought Kelly was going to win. It was just a great fight, a great matchup. That's what happens in boxing. Roberto Duran fights Tommy Hearns in a highly anticipated fight. Roberto Duran gets starched. Does that mean that Roberto Duran shouldn't have boxed Tommy Hearns? Yeah. You can say so many things about different fights. Yes, the experience thing can be a factor, but if the manager and the coach who spend all the time with a fighter believe that they can win that fight, they believe they could win the fight, and they see that fighter day in, day out. So they will kind of like take the fights that based on what they believe that their fighter can achieve and can do right now. And looking at the opponent, they think, does that style suit our man? Yes, it does. Okay, it's worth the fight because we believe we're going to win the fight. It's worth taking a fight. It's all right on the outside. Once it goes wrong, we can all say, "Oh, fucking hell, shouldn't have took that. Shouldn't have took that." No, it is what it is. It's boxing is full of opinions. It'll always have opinions, and that's what makes it great.
It is. Speaking of opinions, Dave, 2 fights that we can look forward to this year. Canelo, Billy Joe Saunders. Just your thoughts on Canelo at the weekend. Can I ask you? Can I ask a direct question, Dave? Did Yildirim really go in there for the paycheck? Because he's had an awful lot of criticism of some quite respected characters in boxing.
It's very easy to turn around and say that. It is very, but when I watched the fight, I didn't think he just got him. That's not what the thought that came into my mind. When I stayed up for that fight, but staying up for the fight, I knew Yildirim had no chance of winning the fight. I knew he had no chance of winning the fight, but I still stayed up for it because I'm a fan of Canelo's, and because I wanted to see what Canelo would do on fight night. Canelo looked very, very good in what he was doing. Forget about the opponent, in what he was doing. He looked very, very good. He dispatched the opponent very, very well and looked great doing it. Yildirim, I just thought the occasion, he's fighting Canelo, half you can think, well, maybe he froze a little bit. But the other thing that I thought was, well, we knew he weren't any good for that fight. So it's just difference in levels. So he couldn't get himself into a position to throw and to land shots. And yes, it did feel Canelo's power straight away, which put him into a bit of a shell. It's easy to turn around and say, oh, you only turned up for payday. Sometimes fighters get in the ring with somebody and they're just not good enough. It don't mean that they didn't try. He might have tried. It just didn't look like that he did, because maybe he felt that every time he was going to step into range to fire, Canelo would do something that stopped him from punching. You know, I just don't think I just think levels and a little bit of fucking hell. Look at the big stage, because that was some show, some ring entrance. You know, don't get Yildirim's in the ring waiting for that. You know, he's not used to anything like that, and that can affect a fighter. Maybe as well, he was caught in I don't know, maybe caught in it's his first fight with his new coach. Maybe didn't quite know how to deliver it. It's one thing delivering it with sparring partners that you're supposed to be looking good against. The shouting and ranting and raving about, you know, he's a new animal, he's this, he's that. But then to go in there and try and do it against Canelo, different levels, mate. I just think it were levels. And we all knew going into the fight that they were a massive, massive gulf in levels. He's not boxed for 730 odd days or something like that. I think his last fight was a loss. He shouldn't have been in the ring with him. So when he gets in the ring with him, that is a reason why he shouldn't have been in the ring with him, because he just wasn't anywhere near that level.
Yeah. Billy Joe Saunders next, Dave. Is Billy Joe Saunders on Canelo's level, and can he do it? Can he cause him problems?
I think Billy Joe Saunders is anybody at 168, anybody that's got the style to give Canelo problems is Billy Joe Saunders. Do I think now Billy can beat him? I don't know, because Canelo's been active. Not only has he been active, he's been consistently in the gym, improving, working to improve. Not just spending half a camp to lose weight and then just get back to where he was before the last camp. It's kind of like in the camp, have a couple of weeks off, back in the gym. In camp, have a couple of weeks, back in the gym. It's kind of like that's how he's been. And the rate of improvement for that just takes you up levels. Billy, for me, blows hot and cold. So you never know which Billy Joe Saunders you're going to get. He's not somebody that showed me that as the rounds go on, he can still keep everything that he was doing, the way it looks great and sharp early doors. Can he keep it going on? Can he go through the gears? I think it's a very tough fight for Billy. Style-wise, Billy at his best has got the ability to beat anybody. But because I think Billy Joe Saunders is a very, very good fighter. But do I think he's elite level? He's not shown me anything to suggest that he is elite level. He's got the elite level skill set. I think he's a genius. I think he's brilliant. But there needs to be everything. There needs to be other things that go in alongside that for you to beat the very, very best in the game. You know, you can't be going into a camp where if you've got, I don't know how many weeks it is, I don't know how it is, 12 weeks, say 13 weeks, 14 weeks, where you're spending 4 or 5 weeks of that losing weight, getting rid of a lot of shit, and then getting your timing back and all that. You need to be around where you can go in there and every session's improving you, because there is such a difference in levels to who he's boxed, to who he's about to box. You know, for me, him against Andy Lee was brilliant, fantastic. I don't people rave over David Lemieux, but I expected that from Billy against David Lemieux, because David Lemieux's got no feet. You know, it was slow and very, very predictable. So I expected that, and he was brilliant. Don't get me wrong, he was absolutely brilliant. But they're the two standout performances really as a pro. Everything kind of since, unless I'm forgetting something, everything kind of since has been steady.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Steady. Whereas you look at the levels that Canelo's been fighting at, Callum Smith, Kovalev, Danny Jacobs, these are big fights, you know, good fighters, consistently. And he's been looking good. He's been looking good in them, and he's improving all the time, and he's hungry. I think it's very, very difficult to beat these guys that are at the very, very top, the elite level fighters, where it's a case of where if you haven't been doing your stuff consistently, I think that puts you at a disadvantage. So I would make Canelo a favorite, no doubt, because the other thing is for me is that I don't believe that Billy hits hard enough to stop Canelo. I don't believe Billy hits hard enough to stop Canelo coming at him and firing those body shots. And if Billy's not physically in a position where he can sustain what he needs to do for the full 12 rounds, it's a tough fight. And then also you've got to think, well, if Billy wins the rounds, but they're not 100% clear cut, is he going to get a decision? No. So how does Billy Joe Saunders win the fight? He has to win the majority of rounds so clearly, as in literally not get touched, and to be landing shots clearly on Canelo where they don't look like they're landing on Canelo's gloves, because if it looks like it's a land on Canelo's gloves, you guarantee the judges are going to be saying they are landing on Canelo's gloves and they're not landing. So he's got to be hitting him cleanly, and Canelo's got a good defense, so it's going to be very, very hard to land clean shots regularly on Canelo anyway. So it's a tough fight, a very tough fight for him.
It is indeed. If nothing else, Dave, I think the build-up might be worth tuning in for, knowing Billy.
Yeah. Listen, and Billy's going to 100% believe that he wins the fight. Yeah. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. He 100% believes he's going to win the fight. And like I said, he's got the ability and the style that we know from the past gives Canelo problems. But Canelo seems to be a much wiser, cleverer fighter these days than what he was back when he fights against Lara and people like that he had problems with. So we'll see. But I'd love him to do it. I would love him to do it, but I just think it's a very, very tough fight. It's fighting the elite, the best of the best right now. So it's a tough fight.
It is. Last one, Dave, on that. I don't know if you've just heard Taylor Ramirez has been confirmed.
Just seen that, yeah. I've just seen that on my Twitter.
What to look forward to?
Good fight. That's a really good fight. Do you know what? Josh Taylor, what is it, 15 fights? He's 16 fights in now, 15 or 16 fights in. You look at what he's achieved in those handful of fights. That's outstanding. Yeah. So again, I'll go back to when people are saying, oh, you know, the Russian fighters and this and that. No, if you believe that they're good enough, and if the fighter believes that they're good enough, and you move them quickly, if they are good enough, they'll carry on winning. If they're not, they'll fall off, have to get back on the horse and have to go again. Josh Taylor just keeps ticking the boxes. And this, I believe he beats Ramirez. I think he beats Ramirez, and that's going to be such a great achievement, especially in the amount of fights that he's had as well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Really am.
Agree. Leave the last word to you, Dave. 2021. What's your hopes for the stable over the coming year? Because you've also got Hopi and Lerone. What would the perfect 2021 be for you, Dave?
Well, it's got off to a good start because I've had 4 fights. Samuel Antwi won the English, Lee Wood won the British, Jordan won the WBA International, got a number 5 ranking in the WBA. Opie Price, another impressive performance. I just want to keep winning. I want each fighter to keep progressing, improving, and I want fans back. I want the buzz back. I'm looking forward to what pans out this year. It's got off to a great start for us, and I'm just looking forward to see how it works out. All the guys are going to be working hard, pushing themselves hard, giving everything that they've got for the sport. So I just hope they keep continuing to be rewarded.
Indeed. And I haven't even asked you about AJ and Fury yet. We'll leave that until we meet up ringside, Dave.
Yeah.
Dave, it's been a pleasure. I really, really appreciate your time.
Good to speak to you, mate. Good to speak to you.